demonstration of the plans now being laid to throw the United States into a third world war. It was made a short time ago before a large group in the congressional room of the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C. Both the speech and the question and answer period later so electrified the audience that a group of patriots has transferred it to two long-playing records which you may buy to play for friends, clubs, and your church groups in your community. The speaker is Mr. Benjamin Freedman, noted authority on Zionism and all of its schemes. Mr. Freedman is a former Jew, and I mean a former Jew. He has fought the communist world conspiracy tooth and nail and stands today as a leading American patriot. We now take you to the speaker's platform to present Benjamin Freedman.
What I intend to tell you tonight is something that you have never been able to learn from any other source. And what I tell you now concerns not only you, but your children and the survival of this country and Christianity. I'm not here just to dish up a few facts to send up your blood pressure, but I'm here to tell you things that will help you preserve what you consider the most sacred thing in the world, the liberty and the freedom and the right to live as Christians, where you have a little dignity and a little right to pursue the things that your conscience tells you are the right things as Christians. Now, first of all, I'd like to tell you that on August 25th, 1960, that was shortly before election, Senator Kennedy, who is now the President of the United States, went to New York and delivered an address to the Zionist Organization of America. In that address, to reduce it to its briefest form, he stated that he would use the armed forces of the United States to preserve the existence of the regime set up in Palestine by the Zionists, who are now in occupation of that area. In other words, Christian boys are going to be yanked out of their homes, away from their families, and sent abroad to fight in Palestine against the Christian and Muslim Arabs who merely want to return to their homes. And these Christian boys are going to be asked to shoot to kill these innocent people who only want to follow out 15 resolutions passed by the United Nations in the last 12 years, calling upon the Zionists to allow these people to return to their homes. Now, when the United States troops appear in the Middle East to fight with the Zionists as their allies to prevent the return of these people who were evicted from their homes in the 1948 armed insurrection by the Zionists who were transplanted there from Eastern Europe. When that happens, the United States will trigger World War III. You say, when will that take place? The answer is, as soon as the difficulties between France and Algeria have been settled, that will take place. As soon as France and Algeria have settled their difficulties and the Arab world or the Muslim world has no more wars on their hands with France, they are going to move these people back into their homes. And when they do that, President Kennedy sends your sons to fight over there to help the crooks hold on to what they stole from innocent men, women, and children, we will trigger World War III. And when that starts, you can be sure we cannot emerge from that war a victor. We are going to lose that war because there is not one nation in the world that will let one of their sons with us for such a cause. I know to speak to these ambassadors in Washington and at United Nations, and of the 99 nations there, I've consulted with maybe 70 of them, and when we go to war in Palestine to help the Keys retain possession of what they have stolen from these innocent people, we're not going to have a man there to fight with us as our allies. And who will these people have supporting them, you ask? Well, 4 days after President Kennedy, or he was then Senator Kennedy, made that statement, on August 28, 1960, the Arab nations called a meeting in Lebanon, and there they decided to resurrect or reactivate the government of Palestine, which has been dormant more or less since the 1948 armed insurrection by the Zionists. Not alone that, they ordered the creation of a Palestinian army, and there are now drilling maybe 500,000 soldiers in that area of the world to lead these people back to their homes. With them, they have as their allies all the nations of what is termed the Bandung Conference group. That includes the Soviet Union and every Soviet Union satellite. It includes Red China. It includes every independent country in Asia and Africa, or 80% of the world's total population. 80% of the world's population, 4 out of 5 human beings on the face of the earth, will be our enemies at war with us. Not only are they 4 out of 5 human beings now on the face of this earth, but they are the non-Christian population of the world, and they are the non-Caucasian, the non-white nations of the world. And that's what we say. And what is the reason? The reason is that here in the United States, the Zionists and their co-religionists have complete control of our government. For many reasons, too many and too complex to go in here at this time. I'll be glad to answer questions, however, to support that statement. The Zionists and their co-religionists rule this United States as though they were the absolute monarchs of this country. Now you say, well, that's a very broad statement to make, but let me show what happened while you were, I don't want to wear that out. Let me show you what happened while we were all asleep. I'm including myself with you. We were all asleep. What happened? World War I broke out in the summer of 1914. 1914 was the year in which World War I broke out. There are a few people here my age who remember that. Now that war was waged on one side by Great Britain, France, and Russia, and on the other side by Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. What happened? Within 2 years, Germany had won that war. Not alone won it nominally, but won it actually. The German submarines, which were a surprise to the world, had swept all the convoys from the Atlantic Ocean, and Great Britain stood there without ammunition for her soldiers, stood there with 1 week's food supply facing her, and after that, starvation. At that time, the French army had mutinied. They lost 600,000 of the flower of the French youth in the defense of Verdun on the Somme. The Russian army was defecting. They were picking up their toys and going home. They didn't want to play war anymore. They didn't like the Tsar. And the Italian army had collapsed. Now, Germany, not a shot had been fired on the German soil. Not an enemy soldier had crossed the border into Germany. And yet, here was Germany offering England peace terms. They offered England a negotiated peace on what the lawyers call a status quo ante basis. That means let's call the war off and let everything be as it was before the war started. Well, England in the summer of 1916 was considering that seriously. They had no choice. They was either accepting this negotiated peace that Germany was magnanimously offering them, or going on with the war and being totally defeated. While that was going on, the Zionists in Germany, who represented the Zionists from Eastern Europe, went to the British War Cabinet, and I'm going to be brief because it's a long story, but I have all the documents to prove any statement that I make if anyone here is curious or doesn't believe what I is possible. The Zionists in London went to the British War Cabinet and they said, look here, you can yet win this war. You don't have to give up. You don't have to accept the negotiated peace offered to you now by Germany. You can win this war if the United States will come in as your ally. The United States was not in the war at that time. We were fresh, we were young, we were rich, we were powerful. And they told England, we will guarantee to bring the United States into the war as your ally, to fight with you on your side, if you will promise us Palestine after you win the war. In other words, they made this deal. We will get the United States into this war as your ally. The price you must pay us is Palestine after you have won the war and defeated Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. Now, England had as much right to promise Palestine to anybody as the United States would have to promise Japan to Ireland for any reason whatsoever. It's absolutely absurd that Great Britain, that never had any connection or any interest or any right in what is known as Palestine, should offer it as coin of the realm to pay the Zionists for bringing the United States into the war. However, they made that promise in October of 1916. October 1916. And shortly after that, I don't know how many here remember it, the United States, which was almost totally pro-German, because the newspapers here were controlled by Jews, the bankers were Jews, all the media of mass communications in this country were controlled by Jews, and they were pro-German, because their people, in the majority of cases, came from Germany, and they wanted to see Germany lick the Tsar. The Jews didn't like the Tsar, and they didn't want Russia to win this war. So the German bankers, the German Jews, Kuhn Loeb, and the other big banking firms in the United States refused to finance France or England to the extent of $1. They stood aside and they said, as long as France and England are tied up with Russia, not 1 cent. But they poured money into Germany. They fought with Germany against Russia, trying to lick the Tsarist regime. Now, those same Jews, when they saw the possibility of getting Palestine, they went to England and they made this deal. At that time, everything changed, like the traffic light that changes from red to green, where the newspapers had been all pro-German, where they'd been telling the people the difficulties that Germany was having fighting Great Britain commercially and in other respects. All of a sudden, the Germans were no good. They were villains.